Okay, now we want to implement this cascade behavior on our make dropdown list. So the first thing I want to do is on this make dropdown list, I want to listen to the changes. So I handle the change event. I'm going to bind this to a method in our class on make change. And now in our component, I'm going to add this method on make change. Now at this point, I need to know what make is selected. So I need to bind this dropdown list to a field in my component. So we use two-way binding here, ng model. The reason I'm using two-way binding is because in the future, we're going to use this form to edit a vehicle. So we're going to get a vehicle from the server, and with this two-way binding, this drop-down list would automatically be set to the make property of our vehicle. So here, I'm going to bind this to vehicle.make. Okay, now I'm going to go back into component and declare this field here, vehicle. Now initially, I want to set this to a blank object. In the future, when we're implementing editing of vehicles, this object will be set to an object that we retrieve from the server. Now, before going any further, I want to make sure what I have done so far is going to work. So in onMakeChange, I want to simply log the currently selected make. So console.log. Let's just log this vehicle field, this.vehicle. Save. Okay, we got this error, can't bind to ng model since it isn't a known property of select. So the reason we're getting this error is because this ng model directive we applied here is defined in the forms module, and we need to explicitly import it into our app module. So let's go to app.module. Now I would like to clean up this file. Here we have 3 modules. I'm going to cut them and put them on the top. So first I want to import all the modules, then all the components and services. And I also like to order them alphabetically. This way I can quickly see if I have imported something or not. So import forms module from @angular/forms. Now I'm going to import that here, forms module. Okay, save. Now back here, refresh. We have another error. If ng model is used within a form tag, either the name attribute must be set or the form control must be defined as standalone. So in the template, I forgot to set the name attribute here. Let's set it to make. Okay, now back here, refresh. I'm going to select a make. Here's the console. So we have a vehicle object with make set to 1. So far, so good. Now I need to look at this makes object, which is an array, and find a make with the given ID. And from there, we can get the models. So back here, this.makes.find. Note that we are not getting IntelliSense here, because by default, the type of identifiers in TypeScript is any, and any does not have a method called find. So we need to explicitly set the type of this field to any array. And with this, we get IntelliSense. So now, if I press dot, these are all the methods available in arrays. So I want to find a make. Here I use an arrow function or a lambda expression. m.id equals this.vehicle.make. Now here we have a compilation error. Because this vehicle field, we set it to an empty object, and this object does not have a property called make. So again, we can get rid of this compilation error by setting the type of vehicle to any. Okay. Now at this point, we get the selected make. And we can use selected make.models to populate our second drop-down list. So I'm going to declare another field here. Just like we have makes, we're going to have models as the data source behind our drop-down list. And then here I'm going to set this.models equals selected make.models. Also, I'm going to remove this console.log. We don't need it anymore. And we can get rid of this code block and make our code cleaner. Save. And finally, we need to go to our template and populate this model drop-down list with our models field. So I'm going to add an option here, just a blank option, duplicate it. For the second one, I'm going to apply ng4 directive, let m of models. For the value, I'm going to use m.id, and for the label, I'm going to use m.name. Save. Now back here, I'm going to select a make 1. Now look, we've got the models for make 1. If I change this to make 2, here are make 2 models. So the happy path is working. Now let's look at the edge cases. What if I change this to an empty item? We still have make 2 models. And also, if you look at the console, you see this error, cannot read property models of undefined. So it's a good practice to always have this console open. Unfortunately here, because of screen resolution limitations, I cannot put the main window and the console tab next to each other. So we got that error on this line. Selected make was undefined and we couldn't access the model's property. So the problem with this code is that we're assuming that there is always a make with the given ID in our array. So I'm going to change this. If we have selected make, then we use selected make.models. Otherwise, use an empty array. Save. Back here. So select make 1. Beautiful. Now an empty item. Good. Finally, make 1. Beautiful. And one last selection, make 2. So that's how we implement cascading drop-down lists on the client side. Now, in your application, if you're working with a large data set, you shouldn't download all these objects to the client. So when the user selects a make here, you need to make a separate call to the backend and get the objects related to the current selection. So the only difference is on this line. Instead of setting this.models to selected make.models, we need to call the backend using a service. Okay, next I'm going to implement the dynamic checkboxes on our form.